if your child's sitting beside you and you're learning with them, you're teaching them that it's okay to not know, it's okay to learn, and that you're there to learn with them, and it's a positive experience.
Hey guys, welcome to BloomX episodes in 2020. We have a great lineup for you guys. As you notice, we're in a new location, the Huddle Share Space. We'll be filming out here from now on. It's also where our offices are. And big shout out to MCRO, who continues to support us. If you guys need any apps, any kind of software development, definitely consider them in your process. They do a great job, and they support us, so they can support you. Perfect, and we're on.
Okay.
All right, man. I've been super looking forward to having you on and getting this whole thing going on, because we've been friends on Instagram for a long time.
Yeah.
And now is the first time we're meeting.
Yeah.
Funny enough.
Yeah.
Right. So I started following you back when you were in Sri Lanka doing a lot of work for startups there.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody shared something we were doing, and I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? Started following your account, and you were like blogging from the ground floor, like Jaffna, like people like coding in these institutions and all these startups coming up. And I'm like, what? Like you were a window, a gateway into that whole world that was invisible to us.
Yeah.
And really gravitated you with that, and we started talking back and forth. So super glad to have you on the podcast.
I'm excited to be here, man.
Yeah. And we want to get to that, right? So like a little bit of your story and how you got to that point of going back home to Sri Lanka and like help teach kids how to run startups and all these things, right?
Yeah.
So let's start there. Like you grew up Scarborough?
I grew up in Scarborough, yeah. I mean, so I was born in Sri Lanka. My family came here in '93. We lived in Tuxedo Court, Markham and Ellesmere, family of 8. That's kind of where I grew up there. And then in grade 8, at the grade 8 summer, I relocated to Waterloo. So I have 8 siblings. Most of us are going to Waterloo at the time. My parents were like, we can't keep paying separate rent for everyone. Let's just all relocate to Waterloo.
Yeah.
So we all left. It was actually really cool because I never told any of my friends. This is like pre-social media, so I never told any of my friends.
Yeah.
And I just ended up in Waterloo, and I, lost communication with all of them for 5-6 years. And then all of a sudden, most of those guys ended up back at Waterloo. And so I got to reconnect with them like 5 years later. They're like, oh, we thought you died.
Yeah. You just left without saying anything.
Just left, yeah.
Okay, cool. And then you grew up in the Waterloo area, so you saw probably a lot of tech companies grow up and like, right, like where BlackBerry was the king of the city at the time, right? Probably.
Yeah. Waterloo's always had a cool buzz about it, and it's like becoming more and more popular. Obviously, like everyone knows about it, but even before it became the tech startup scene, it was always like Microsoft and Google's like go-to places to hire, right? People like exclusively hired out of Waterloo because their engineers were smart. So there was always like a tech, I guess like we were always at the frontier of tech, right? Alongside like U of T and a couple other schools in Canada. Yep. So definitely a lot of that percolated throughout. Even when I was in high school, like I made friends with a few guys who were building websites at the time. These are like grade 9, 10 kids who, as side hustles were building websites for small florists and whatever around the area. And I did a bit of that myself too. So it's pretty cool.
Nice. Yeah. Got entrepreneurial right from the beginning then, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm entrepreneurial. I think I'm just like curious.
Okay.
So I saw a bunch of kids doing this and I was like, that sounds like it's fun. I'm gonna go try that. And then I did it and I was like, I like it. And that was my first taste of, teaching myself something and technology. I taught myself HTML, and this is like back in the day when HTML was like the only way to design a website. And like, this is a bit post like Yahoo GeoCities. Yeah.
I
don't know if you remember that, but like post Yahoo GeoCities and like pre, Wix and Square and all those guys.
No, definitely. Yeah. So you're like manual coding for these guys, and you learned a little bit about code and stuff.
Yeah.
Did you end up going in engineering? Like
no, I did math.
Math.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's also like, again, like I always find it funny that you make a bunch of kids who are 18 pick their university, like their direction for the rest of their life. I chose my degree because my brother was doing math.
Okay.
And literally I was like, he's a guy I idolized. I'm just gonna be like him. He's doing math, I'll do one of those too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And you grew up in a house with a lot of siblings, right? Like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the second youngest of the 8, so I had a lot of people like, and they're
8.
all, yeah, exactly, right? And they're all like very intelligent, like my oldest brother, even back in Sri Lanka, like was skipping grades. They're all very like intelligent, successful people. So I didn't have to look too far for role models, which I'm grateful for. So I just look up and go, okay, what are you guys doing, right? And at the time, there's like 3 of them who were in, so 2 of my siblings had finished math and one of them was in math at Waterloo. Yep. And I was like, okay, there's a trend here, I'm gonna do that. So.
Nice.
Yeah.
And like, what got you into like the tech scene?
So interestingly enough, when I was in math, I made friends with a lot of guys who were, obviously wanted to become investment bankers and traders and whatever. And I went down that route, and I wrote my CFA, but I realized that I wasn't as passionate about numbers didn't excite me. Like investments didn't excite me the way that technology did. Like the feeling you get of building something, it wasn't the same. So I kind of realized that I wanted to be in technology, but I knew that I didn't have the technology knowledge because I spent 4 years learning about finance. So I was like, how do I bridge these two things? And I got lucky. As I was graduating, there was this company called Capco. They're a consulting firm, purely operating in the financial services space. They saw my resume, and I guess I didn't I was kind of clever back then. I didn't write the months in my tenure for co-ops. I just wrote the years.
Yeah.
So they saw my resume and thought I was an experienced guy, right? So they reached out and they're like, hey, do you want to be a senior consultant at our firm? And my sister, oddly enough, was working at the firm at the time. So I messaged her and I was like, hey, listen, your company's trying to hire me at your level. Yeah. And we had a laugh about it. And she's like, okay, I don't think they know that you're just graduating. So she put me in touch with the recruiter and said, hey, this is my younger brother, and that he's an intern, but talk to him. So I sat down and talked to them, and I was like, this is cool because I get to bridge the knowledge that I'd gained in the financial services space with my love of technology, because that's what they've been doing. They've been delivering software solutions to banking for the last whatever many years. It was started by a guy named Rob Habert and way back, right? And so it was cool. I got to bridge those two things and kind of gravitate more and more towards technology. And what ended up happening was, so I went in, I did the classic BA role, wrote requirements, etc. And the more time I spent with technologists, the more I gravitate towards understanding it. I still don't I should never be allowed to submit a line of code into anything that's ever developed, but I have a good enough understanding of it. And I'm grateful for all my mentors too. Two of the guys who mentored me when I was there, this guy named John Murdoch and a guy named Voya, I can't even pronounce his last name, but they were both tech architects, and they kind of took a liking to me, and I loved learning from them. So I used to sit down and talk to them about software architecture and different platforms, and I just absorbed as much as they taught me, and it made me more and more equipped, I guess, to have those conversations.
Nice.
Yeah.
So this clearly got you more in a product focused role.
Yeah.
Right? Where you're gonna take ownership over how things get developed, right? I mean, what skills was necessary? Did you ever have to be okay, I came from a math background. How do I understand this kind of things? How do I build these things? What was the process there?
Yeah, I think that the thing I got from doing math was that it taught me how to problem solve in abstract spaces, and it gave me the confidence that I could walk into most places and break down the problems that needed to be solved. So I became exceptional at delivery. I kind of gained a reputation for being able to walk into at-risk projects and course correct, or walk into a delivery that seemed impossible and figure out a way to make it possible, right? And I think that came from the confidence of being able to walk into weird courses about, you start learning math and it's about numbers, and then by the time you finish a degree, it's about Greek letters, right? It's just it's a very different space. So learning, I think that gave me the confidence to do that. Yeah. And then throughout my experience, I sat beside guys who were in the technology space, learned a bunch about technology, and that gave me more and more of the vocabulary, really. And that's what it came down to, I think, was understanding the vocabulary. And I always, anyone who works for me, I always, reiterate this, but understanding what the person across the table from you is saying and being able to speak that language is fundamental to being able to work together, right? I think that was the critical skill that I brought. But how I got into product management, it was around the time when user experience research was becoming all the rage, and everyone wanted to be a UX designer or whatever, right? So I'm like that too. So I was I want to be a UX designer. Yeah. So I took some time off and I went to Chicago and I did a boot camp on web design, full stack web design and user experience research.
So you went to Chicago just for this?
Yeah, for 4 months.
Why Chicago?
I just found a program.
Okay.
I did a bunch of research. I found a program. I always had a thing for I always wanted to get out of the city. I always wanted to explore. I always wanted to do something like that. And this is kind of a nice little first step.
Cool.
Yeah, it was really exciting, and I was lucky enough to be working for a company that supported me, and they're like, yeah, you know what, they saw the future in it too, so this is gonna help you obviously deliver value back to our clients. So they let me go there, and I spent 4 months there. Learned a ton about user research that I don't think I would have learned in any other space. They're called Designation. I think they're still around. They're I was there, I think that was their 4th cohort or 5th cohort when I was there. They're well into their 30th or 40th cohort now. They've been operating for 4 or 5 years now. Very, very, doing very well. And they've got, their alumni are in very good places as well. So I actually think I was probably one of their weaker students too. So there's a bunch of guys.
What was it called? What program called?
Designation.io.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a code camp?
Yeah. And I think they're teaching a lot of different stuff now too. They were like a startup when I went too. So they started off teaching full stack web design.
Definitely.
And now I think they're in a bunch of different spaces. So
yeah, definitely. I mean, there was definitely an implosion of people who want to go in that field because it became such a necessary field. As technology built these apps, people started finally tuning in. It's like there's a whole science behind how the human computer interface looks like, right?
Yeah.
From the interfacing with the screen, like there's a whole understanding that goes behind it. It's both an art and a science.
Yeah.
Right?
It really is. And I think it started with, what's his name? Alan Cooper, the guy who like developed Visual Basic. He wrote a book, which I think was like one of the seminal pieces in the space. It was called The Inmates Are Running the Asylum. And it was all about how the software developers are developing software UI.
Yeah.
And like, if you look at the average person and the software developer, their brains are vastly different, right? You're designing software for a bunch of really smart guys who are like highly technical and they love their widgets and dashboards. And the average user's like, just give me the way to do the thing I'm there to do. Right? So like just abstracting that and getting people to rethink. I think that like started the movement. And then, a lot of people like caught on to it. So
absolutely. And like, if you look back at apps how they were before, it looks so archaic compared to like the beautifully designed, like simplistic, you know what to do almost instantaneously kind of apps.
Yeah, I mean, like even think about like apps you used to use, like Microsoft Word back in the day versus like, Google Docs now, like just vastly different, right? The amount of things you could do on Microsoft Word that was just so confusing and complex versus the way you use, just as simple as a word processor, right? Like the way you use Google Docs today, so different.
Absolutely. And like I came from a psychology and neuroscience background. So I thought UX, UI would be a great avenue for me as well. So here I have formal training in understanding people. Now you can apply it to how they use machines. Yeah. Right? I mean, there must be like a synergy there. So I actually went into the similar kind of path.
That's cool. So tell me about what did you study?
Neuroscience and psychology.
Okay, cool. And then you went from that into like the tech space?
Yeah. So, I mean, brown kid, parents wanted me to be a doctor. I was really good at biology. Yeah. But like, it was something that interested me, but I couldn't see myself working in it.
Okay.
So I volunteered for a hospital really early on, like in between grade 12 and I think to be like, do I want to be a doctor? Even though I got into a human biology program, like pre-med program at UFT. And I'm like, within 2 weeks, I'm like, I hate this. You know what I mean? Like, I don't like want to be around
the disappointment of your parents.
Yeah.
Just feel it.
Yeah. And I'm like, it seems to be a great problem solving thing. I like problems. Yeah. And biology has a lot of problems to solve, but I can't see myself doing it as work. It's conceptually understanding it. It's kind of interesting. Yeah. So I kind of changed within my first year, my human bio into neuroscience and psychology. So I can take the credits and I already got into that department, right? To be like, I want to understand people at the very least. Yeah. Right. And from there I got into sales.
Cool.
Right?
Okay.
So just like I started my first company when that kind of went down because like, that's a whole different story.
That's for another podcast.
Yeah, that's probably on another episode.
Probably, okay.
But one of my friends called me and he was like a year younger than me. He was like had to while being in school had to work almost full time to help out at home. Yeah. Right. And because of that, like he had an actual career already settled. He was running a department at like 19. And he calls me and he's like, yo, I've seen what you've been doing. You need to come here to this company. There's a job opening. I'll hook you up. Hooked me up with my first corporate job. And that's my first time doing like it was a customer service role, but I was running as a sales role. Okay. And I crushed it. The first day I set a company record in like...
You were like the customer success before customer success was a defined field.
Exactly. Yeah. Because applying is almost like a people problem. I want to understand people. And now I have hundreds of people calling me.
Oh, you're dangerous as a salesman then with your neuroscience background.
So like people are calling me. So for me, it was a testing ground to understand all these models of like how I understand people, right? Like how people would work. I got formally trained on how people think and what categories they fall into and like, what problems they have, how emotions work. Yeah. And now I had a testing ground of hundreds of people calling me in this call center environment and had a set goal, right? Take a dissatisfied customer and make them positive and hopefully get an upsell out of it. Yeah. And nobody was doing upsells at that time. It was not even pushing the company. Right. I just started doing it. And I just naturally got drawn to that sales role. Within 2 weeks, got promoted to like team captain. Within 6 months, I was running two departments.
Wow,
at
that's
20.
Amazing.
And just because I streamlined things like that, right? Yeah. Because I was so interested in understanding and putting like the theoretical knowledge I've had into practice and got naturally drawn into sales. Yeah. That kind of kickstarted my sales background and my sales, I guess, career without knowing that I was going into sales. Yeah. I saw it more as an application of understanding people.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I talked about the podcast a few times. Like growing up, for me, talking to people was the hardest thing.
Yeah.
That's why this I love so much, because it seems like I'm conquering this thing that haunted me for a while.
Yeah.
So understanding people, understanding how they kind of operate from a neuroscience background, like from like a hard biology background, psychology, how they operate as a mind state. I even took like a lot of sociology, political science, like kind of economics, like how they operate as a society, kind of map that out. So I got really interested as a problem. How do people flow, right?
Yeah.
And technology, I kind of saw when I got into it. My first technology entrance into technology was when I started my first app.
Right.
No background. Mappian.
Okay.
It was back in like 2013.
Okay.
I decided I want to go into the technology framework. And the real reason is because it became a problem solving again. How do you deploy this understanding of people, how they purchase and all that through this now machine, right?
Yeah.
I saw the emergence of smartphones and it changed me. Because I remember operating my first few companies and not having this smart device in front of me where I can Google something. I can search if a supplier is trusted or not.
Yeah.
Get their reviews, right? I can't search up people. I can't put up like thought notes and everything. I have to go finish a full day of like running operations or meeting all the people, go home, sit in front of a laptop. Because again, Wi-Fi points were not even a big thing then.
Yeah.
And then type it all out. So when smartphones came and put the internet and smart device onto your thing, it's an extension of your brain. I saw the immediate effect of myself, how effective I became through this tool.
Yeah.
So I want to get part of that and be like, how do we connect people better? How can we use this as a broadcast tool to connect people better in different functionalities, right?
Yeah.
And from there, I kind of shifted into a more product role, like where within my own company, applying my understanding of how people function from all these different segments, like from the individual level to like the, how they all connect. How do you build products for them?
Yeah.
That they want to use.
Yeah, that's just like problem solving, right? You're abstract problem solving. It's like, I find that's the brain space, like the brain that works well in product or like business leadership or strategic, like that, the ability to take, one set of knowledge in a field and transpose it to something else, like the ability to abstract concepts. It's like, they say like the sign of intelligence is the ability to like explain something in analogies, like to find analogies is like a sign of intelligence. And I think that's what people do, where you take like, you have your neuroscience background and you go, how do I find the concepts in neuroscience? How do I find the analogous concepts in software development and like sales and whatever else, right? And it's super valuable because like, then you're not learning, like you're not like, oh, well, that's neuroscience and I leave it there and then I go learn software development, I leave it here and then I go learn sales. You're like, what can I use from sales in software development? What can I use from software development in neuroscience? And you start getting these like really cool cross collaborations in your own head, and you become like a very unique, valuable member or like a competitor almost in this space, because you're like, you, Ravi, are able to do a thing that not many people can do because you've got neuroscience and sales and tech, and you're able to put it together and offer it back to the world in a space that like, or in a way that no one else can do. Which is really cool.
Absolutely. And like when I was running like sales teams, right? I used to work for this one company where it was like, I would directly manage like 5 complete independent salespeople, commission only, all commission only. The entire company had 60 commission only salespeople. And the whole task of managing was like, how to keep them motivated and functioning and running and like on the streamline and like on like a consistent basis. How do you put these checks and balances in when you're not paying them salary? Right?
They're all commission based.
It's such an interesting problem. Think about it. How do you keep them motivated and running when they don't have a monthly draw? Right? But you have to have these check and balances to keep them aligned, make sure they're coming to meetings, make sure they're keeping in line with the product materials are and all that. And again, problem solving metric, right? Applying that. So using technology, using a sales background, but also the neuroscience to connect people. Right? In a better, more functioning ways. And funny enough, like we now develop like sales technology. I was explaining to you a little bit before what some of the products we're doing. And one of the things we do is like, it's process mapping, right, from a sales organizational standpoint. And funny enough, I'm actually drawn to inspirations of how the back end of our product, the product design works, is inspired by how cells like transfer information within themselves. And I've seen myself like as we are discussing as a company, in fact, we're constructing this, I'm like inspired by like my old research into how cells like do this. Because they're like, semi-autonomous, right? Locking information together and the way the information transfers back and forth, super secure, but also like has like feedback mechanisms built into it. And I'm like, what if we can use this, build a model of a company, like a process chain, and model the company in a virtual environment and see how all the cross flows function. Right? Using all the data points that is available from all these SaaS tools they use. And as we get into this kind of process thing, like how biology kind of fits into that. It's so interesting.
That reminds me of, so the way you think about it is kind of like the way, like, I'm not a technologist, but I kind of loosely understand these technology concepts. So when we start talking about things like, microservice architecture, I think about it similar to like cell biology, where I'm like, there are these independent things that are just, their core purpose is to be the best thing they can be, but then they also collaborate with each other as necessary, right? So there's like markers they send back and forth, there's information they send back and forth. And like, to me, the ability to take that and transpose it to like understanding, what you're trying to do on the back end of defining your product, like that's going to give you the edge that a lot of people won't have, because everyone else who's in the space is probably looking around being like, okay, well, what does Salesforce do? What does, Cognos do? What do all these other CRMs do? And you're like, okay, cool. What do these cells do? Yeah. Right? It's just like a whole different mindset that no one else is thinking about. Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's, again, like, I think that's what, for me, like, businesses or like certain startups is an ability to problem solve at a deep level, right? And exactly what you're doing. If you as a company have a solution, it's to a pain point, a problem. Yeah. And the depth of that problem and the depth of your solution it's a direct correlation to the value you provide.
Yeah. And like, so I was recently reading an article about how like the most successful products, like the innovative products, are the ones that like forecasted what a customer wanted, not met a customer's needs. Like you kind of, if you think about like an iPhone, right? The iPhone came out and like predicted what the customer would want or solved the problem the customer didn't even realize they had, right? And the ability to think outside the box and like think about those potential solutions are what will propel a company to be successful. And it's something that, like I actually over the last little bit lost touch with a bit because I became very like in consulting, you learn how to deliver products, and so I was very like process oriented, and it's something that like Travis, my CEO, and I like often go back and forth about, and he pushes me quite a bit to expand the way of thinking, and it's really cool. Like I know you know Travis, right? Yeah. So like sitting down with him is like probably my most favorite hours of the day, and he probably doesn't think so. He probably thinks I'm annoying as hell, but like I'll sit down and I'll bug him to like think about, like just so I'll poke him. I'll get him to like points where, he might get frustrated explaining things, but I'll do it because I want to understand just like deeply how his brain works. And it's so cool because, as an example, we were sitting down thinking through this new flow that we're designing for teachers. And he's like, I would normally be like, okay, what are the similar patterns in other UIs that exist? And he's like, what is an analogous experience to what we're trying to build outside of software? And like, just the thinking of stepping outside of that and the constant reminder to do that gets you to be so creative. So what we ended up looking at was like gaming, right? And like how there's, so we wanted to give teachers like the options to do certain things. And so he was like, what are the analogous spaces that exist right now? What are the analogous patterns and experiences that exist that we can leverage back into our product? And that was like a really cool moment for me to like take a step back and be like, wow, I kind of, maybe not been as innovative as I could be. But going back to thinking about things the way that you're talking about, right? Like taking other spaces and bringing them into what you're doing really helps you, I guess, like pivot and leverage those knowledges.
Yeah. I mean, that's again, going back to problem solving and figuring things out. Like Travis, I mean, I had like, I think I talked to you about this. We had like a 3-hour conversation one day, like a phone call. Yeah. So your 20-minute call turned into a super long one. Yeah. And it's because it's a transfer of knowledge. Yeah. Mostly one-sided.
Travis is a wealth of knowledge.
It's insane.
He's so good. And you can never have a 20-minute meeting with Travis.
No, you can't.
No. Yeah. He already has a 3-hour meeting in his head before he comes to meet with you. And he's got like, you're right. He's a Rolodex of information. He's like, oh, well, this is a fact, but this is also based on these 4 other books. And here are like 5 other researchers who've done this. And here's like 1 million data points. And you sit there and you're like, how do you keep all this in your head? Yeah. And how do you have the recall so quickly to like just, like that's probably the most impressive part about him is the fact that he like can pull a piece of information and like recall it right away and give you the stats about it, right? Like, oh, in 2007, this guy did a research at Stanford University with this many people and they discovered this, and you're just like blown away by that. And so yeah, your 20-minute conversations become 3 hours of them easily.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I'm someone who like prides myself in like understanding a wide depth of different things and being able to like keep up with things, but like talking to Travis kind of like shut down my ego a little bit. Yeah. And it's like there's so much more to understand because he has that recall, the ability to go into like detail. So I mean, no doubt, Knowledgehook, like one of the main reasons you guys done so well is Travis' leadership there, understanding really where he wants to take the company and where he want to go. Yeah. Because he's such a deep understanding in the movement, right, of the company. So I mean, your Knowledgehook, like your journey there started pretty recently, right? Like
so when I came back, it's actually really interesting. So I came back from my time in Sri Lanka, which we'll talk about later. So I came back. I was, I kind of had my heart set on leaving the country. So Knowledgehook was never even in the radar of things I wanted to do. And I started interviewing with a bunch of places. I had a couple offers, some in Australia, UK, whatever. I was exploring these opportunities. And Travis and I had met maybe like a year prior to me leaving the country via Aravanai, which is the not-for-profit that I'm part of. And we were like mentoring startups back home. And so I met Travis. He was one of the mentors who was supposed to come in. And so I met him there and we got in touch. And then we throughout the year, we kind of like had some shared friends. We either met up for drinks or coffee or whatever, just like in a group environment. And we'd always had interesting debates. Anyone who knows me knows I'm a debater. And like, if I know about something, I'll challenge your viewpoint and I'm not scared. I'm also not scared to be wrong. So I'll challenge it and I'll put out what I think. And then if someone proves me wrong, I'll also be like, okay, cool, I'm wrong. That's great. I just learned something from you. Yep. But I won't learn if I'm sitting back and not saying anything. So I'll do that. And so we've had a couple like interactions like that. And so fast forward to me being back in the country, I had a job offer I really liked in Australia. I had my flight booked, had told the employer I was coming in, ready to go. About 3 weeks prior to me leaving the country, Travis hits me up and goes, hey, do you want to grab a coffee? And in my head, I was like, oh, this guy knows I'm leaving the country soon. Or maybe he knows that I'm back in the country and just wants to catch up. We go for a coffee, we're talking, he tells me about Knowledgehook, he tells me about what they're trying to do. And like mid-conversation just kind of drops the bomb and goes, listen, I want to bring you in to run this new line of business we're creating. And I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this, but
no, completely fine. So
I was like, I took a step back. I was like, oh wow, okay.
Did you guys know each other beforehand?
Before, like the year before, that was it. Like I'd known him for a year and we just met, we'd heard of each other. I've totally heard of him, right? Actually, interesting enough, outside of the volunteer as well, I had started volunteering with CTPA because I kind of like hit a point in my life where I wanted to start giving back to the community. And one of the things that we were trying to do is like the Palam mentorship program they run. Palam, mentorship program. I don't know why I said it like Palam, but yeah, the mentorship program they run. So they wanted someone to come and speak, and I'd heard of Travis, and I kind of like seen him speak, and I knew he was a very inspiring person. So I reached out to him to get him to come speak, and he came and gave this like phenomenal talk on just a really it ended up being a really good crash course on anthropology. That's what it really was. It was just it's a conversation with Travis, right? You hire him for one thing and you learn a million things. But it was a really good crash course on anthropology. So yeah, I gained a lot of respect for him there. I think we'd heard of each other through various networks. And so we, over the year developed a relationship of, I guess, like a mutual respect for each other. And then when he called me out for coffee, he was like, listen, I know you have experience doing X, Y, Z. I'd like to bring you in. I flat out told him, I was like, listen, I'm a banking guy. Like my entire experience has been in banking. I don't know anything about education. I can run product, but I don't know anything about education. And he's like, that's cool. We have a lot of education guys. We can prop you up there. You're bringing the product leadership, right? And so it was really cool. So we had the conversation. I met with everyone else on his startup team. Met Lambo, his other co-founder, Arthur, James, Kumar, his CFO. I met with all the guys because I wanted to understand, what they were trying to build. And also, this is probably the first time in an interview process that I kind of made sure I was very thorough and made sure I met everyone and understood the strategy and where the gaps were, where the strengths were, and also made sure that I was bringing in something that people thought was valuable, right? So we had that conversation, and then 3 weeks later, to the disappointment of the Australian employer, I emailed them. I was like, hey guys, I'm not coming anymore. I said yes to Travis, started in August, and it's been a crazy journey. It's been a crazy journey because I don't know anything about education, and so I've been trying to read as many books as I can. And specifically the problem, so Knowledgehook is an instructional guidance system, and the problem they're trying to solve is how to scale teachers to empower students, right? So you have some billion amount of students in the world that need to get taught, and some 100,000 million teachers out there trying to do this job, right? It's just really hard to scale. And then obviously within teachers, you have a distribution of people who are, exceptional teachers and people who are novice and people who are struggling in certain spaces.
So you have a website about this, right?
We do.
You can bring it up?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I just want to show people what you're talking about here. So this is the main website here?
So if you just click on the top left, the Knowledgehook logo,
Dale can switch that over.
Yeah. So this is the main website, so knowledgehook.com, you can definitely check it out. So the problem they're trying to solve is how to help teachers scale. So there's assessments you perform in classrooms. We collect the data in the back end, and what we do differently from a lot of other products is we actually teach the teacher. So rather than just telling them where the students are struggling, we go, hey, listen, students are struggling with, for example, perimeter and area of rectangles, right? Here's a concept they're struggling with. in your classroom. Here is the math background on how you're supposed to teach this concept. And here are like 4 or 5 different common misconceptions. So where students normally struggle, and here's how you can solve it. And like our secret sauce, I would say, is probably the fact that we're working with the guys who wrote the textbooks on this stuff. So one of the guys we have on our team, Chris Kirkpatrick, I don't know, do you remember that like grade 9 math textbook with a roller coaster on it?
Yes.
He's the guy who wrote that.
Okay.
Right? Like, so we got the guys who wrote these textbooks writing the math background material for us. And then what we do is we redigest it and put it in a way that teachers can use it. So that what we're doing is telling a teacher like, hey, I think you're struggling with teaching this concept because your class is saying X, Y, Z as a data point, right? Here's some material for you to get better at it. So we teach those guys.
So you're like empowering and making teachers smarter.
Right, because we think it's a longer term solution. Like if I go and teach the student for you, that's fine. The student's gonna get better, but you're never gonna scale, right? But if I train you up as a teacher, that's a very long lasting solution, right? Now you're like, if I teach you how to teach perimeter and area rectangles and it happens like maybe once or twice in your classroom, I guarantee you the 3rd time you're not gonna make that mistake again. Now there's a thing that you as a teacher are better at, right? And now we've scaled you up. So every future class going forward, Mr. Ravi is gonna teach it properly, right? So it's a cool like longer term solution, which I think is what's differentiating us in the space and why I think it's been successful. And again, this goes back to like Travis's genius, right? This is the way he thinks about stuff. And he's like, how can we solve this problem in an innovative way that no one else is doing it?
Yeah,
right?
I know something that really he obsesses about because he experiences pain point. He understands how hard it is and not be taught properly.
Yeah.
And I mean, I understand that too. Like school's never a place for me. So understanding how using data to better track how students are learning and not learning things and empowering teachers to have a response.
Yeah.
I think that's really amazing. I mean, we talk here a lot, especially on the podcast, about the future of work, what that looks like. And part of that is retraining our citizens, right? In a better way of understanding and learning better, utilizing technology.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think? Like, you guys are clearly putting smart instruments into schools.
Yeah.
Right. But at the same time, like the Ford government is trying to pull almost like instruments out of these schools, like put away your phones, no phones allowed, kind of issue. Well, in the workplace, everyone's using their phones.
Yeah.
Personally, everything's kind of cross-connected, right? So it's like we're almost shouldn't be banning it from our institutions, more like integrating it into like how to better not get distracted. Shouldn't we be teaching those kind of things?
Yeah. Your point, technology is across everywhere, right? Like we have devices in our pockets and there's benefits and downsides to them. So something I do quite often is I put my phone on this thing called like, I don't know if you've seen the new like Google features on their new OS, but they have a feature called like focus mode where you can disable certain apps notifications. And so during my like my core hours, I have focus mode on, and so certain notifications just don't come through. So, and that's because to your point, phones are everywhere. So they have the benefit of allowing you to have real-time interactions with your teammates, allowing you to look up, data on the fly. It's so empowering, but it's also potentially distracting, right? So like that's a thing that I've learned to do, and I think that technology has a place in the classroom. It's not the only thing that should be used in the classroom, and it's something that like Travis and I quite agree on as well. Is that we don't want to. Not to like discredit any of our competitors or anything, but like if you look at a lot of Prodigy is a super engaging gaming mechanism and kids are like on it. And one thing that Travis and I agree on is like the screen time is important. We don't want kids to be on these devices all day, every day. What we want to do is interface with them often enough to give them the value add and then step back and allow them to enjoy their lives. And I think that's the thing that classrooms should take, is to teach kids how to use technology in a responsible way and then step back from it and go, okay, cool guys. Yeah, phones away time. Now we're pulling out our protractors and doing stuff, right? Like, or pulling out pencils and papers and doing stuff. Like, so you kind of like have that blend so that when these kids are stepping out into the regular space, they're not like glued to the phone on TikTok and Instagram. They have the mindset of like, okay, well, this was fun, but I'm going to put it away and go play soccer with my friends.
Absolutely.
Right?
And this is one of the things too, like these devices are made and the applications on them are made as dopamine machines, right? To get people addicted and get those kind of feedback systems.
Yeah.
To like, it's training you for the screen time, get feedback from this device.
Yeah.
So for a lot of kids, I mean, when growing up with it, there's no defense.
Yeah.
Right. You're growing up with it. Your systems are being trained by these systems, right?
Yeah.
By these external things. And I think we need to have that kind of thinking. Absolutely. Is to establish that in our institutions, right? Especially in schools, like, okay, not just banning it and you deal with that problem separately on your own, But okay, how do you deal with that yourselves, right?
Yeah.
I mean, part of what's interests me a lot about what you guys do there is your approach to all this, like what you said with screen time. Do you guys the classrooms, do they have specialized devices to use Knowledgehook, or does it bring your own device? How does that work?
It's a complete SaaS product, right? So you can BYOD. There are some interesting partnerships that we're looking into to empower classrooms that can't afford devices. But that's like down the line. But yeah, this is a complete like SaaS product. Bring your own device. A lot of schools have devices, so most of them are like Chromebooks. So all the kids get like a little Chromebook or a tablet, and they there's features there. And then we recently developed a pretty cool feature that we just deployed. Like it's called Snapshots, and it's basically the ability for kids to like work on a problem, take a picture of it, and in real time have that projected onto the screen. It's typically what you do right now in a classroom is a teacher will go, okay, everyone like pull out your whatever papers, draw something or other, and you walk around as a classroom and you talk to each other one by one on the desk, right? And it's just like, that takes a lot of time and it's not as optimized. And so what we decided was to develop this feature that allowed the students to like on their device, like this is the device interaction, right? So they're doing it on hand and they pull out their device and they take a picture and then it goes onto the screen. So now the teacher can at scale talk to the classroom about what they just did. So she can say like, draw a triangle everyone and take a picture. Kids draw a triangle, so they still learn how to do it with their hands, but then they take a picture and it all shows up.
Nice.
Right? So like, that's the kind of the blend we're trying to take in how we think about our features and how we think about enabling classrooms. It's not to take away the teacher. I think the human interaction still plays a valuable part in the education, like the education process, right? Like I think I'm not an anthropologist or a scientist by any stretch of the word, but like I think mammals, like the reason we're smart is because our ability to learn from parents, right? And that requires a human connection. And I don't think you can put a computer in front of a child and go, okay, good luck. Right, so you need that human there, and so our approach is like we're not going to displace the teacher. What we want to do is empower the teacher, right? Give the teacher everything they need to make this interaction more seamless, so they can be like just be more efficient and effective. Like if right now your success rate's like 70% of your kids are getting 70%, we want to see you get to 90. We want to see you get to 100, right? How do we help you get there? That's the things we're trying to solve.
Absolutely.
So
yeah. And I think that's the right approach to it. I think too much people fear or have anxiety about technology and automation.
Yeah.
They're like, oh my God, the machine's gonna take over. I'm gonna lose my job.
And like you're not shipping your kids off to a farm, right? Like they're gonna leave the classroom and they're gonna see their devices. They're gonna go home and like parents are still giving them laptops and iPads, right? So I think it's it's like teaching kids accounting, right? It's giving them the tools to like be empowered to face off in the world they're inevitably going to be in. They're going to have money, they're going to have technology, they're going to have sex. Like teach them how to do these things responsibly and then step back, right?
Right. And yeah, it's one of the main points of thought that schools have struggled with, right? Are these institutions where you come in and you retain like a fixed curriculum, or are they more public institutions, they come in and they learn a framework that they fit into their own lives? Yeah. And it's always been like almost like a pull and divide between the two. I think part of what we're pushing everyone towards, I think it's smarter play, is to have schools almost like this institution. It's a framework. You come and learn different things, but you teach yourself how to learn.
Yes.
You teach yourself how to use technology, right? You get these kind of best practices.
Yeah.
Kind of applied to you, but then you have the freedom to kind of like move around in.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the interesting part, I think, as schools evolve, because we understand the pain points of like...
we went through it.
it, right?
Yeah.
Like migrating that kind of like academic, almost like fixed ingrained thought pattern to like applying to the real world.
Yeah.
How do I buy a mortgage when I came out of a 12-year, 16 years of school and not even knowing what the word is, right? Like, yeah.
Or even going into school. Like, there's something I didn't think about at all, but going into school, like I never thought about, like the concept of having debt and having to pay it back when I graduated never crossed my mind. So throughout university, like even though I had a co-op job, I never thought about saving the money. I was enjoying my life. Yeah. I was like living my best life, right? And then I came out and I was like, holy crap, I have this massive debt. And also I should probably think about buying a house. How do I save up and pay off a debt and buy a house and all this stuff? And then like with housing prices skyrocketing like 2 years after my graduation, like how do you think about it? I was like just insanely unprepared to face off with that, right? And that's the thing we want to change is, to your point, like all the stuff we teach in classrooms right now, even when you asked about the future of workplace, right? Like a lot of stuff's getting automated. So all that stuff we're teaching right now is kind of, or not teaching right now, sorry, the way we were taught before is not the way to teach anymore. And this actually, it's interesting. It's a good segue into like what I'm trying to build on the parent side is the way we were taught. Like you and I probably learned multiplication tables the way like the classic, the classic Kumon method, right? 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 2 is 4. Like you just the tables, you just memorize them, right? That's not the way kids are learning multiplication anymore. They have these like whole new concepts of like number bonds and these different shapes that they learn how to like place numbers and their relationships together. They learn to think about them in abstract ways, which is useful because we used to need to know how to memorize because we need to recall. I need to be able to tell when I saw numbers, I need to be able to multiply it in my head right away. A computer can do this much faster and at scale. The kid's value in the future is not going to be able to recall these math facts, right?
Perfect.
What they're going to need to know is how to abstractly solve problems so they can be valuable in the workplace and be valuable in society and the economy as a whole, right? So like that's changing. And so one of the things we're trying to build at the Knowledgehook parent site, if you want to pull that up, is the disconnection between parents who've gone through math education, historical math education, feeling unequipped or unskilled to face off with their children. It's the previous site. It's the unequipped or unskilled to face off with their children in the math space, right? So like if your kids are coming up to you saying, oh, well, what's like, mom, help me out with this. What's 3 times 3? And your go-to method is like, you just memorize his tables and you just know that 3 times 3 is 9. That's just it, right? But the way they're teaching kids is so different. And so parents are getting scared to interface with their kids because the things that they bring home homework that the parents don't even think they can teach, right? And that's for a parent who knows math. And there's a bunch of parents who don't know math, who like have struggled with math, and their MO is to say like, oh, well, I sucked at math too, so it's fine if you suck. We want to change that conversation, right? So what we're trying to do is empower parents to have the conversations and to join their children on the journey of learning math, right? Like the kids are going out and learning this stuff. If you weren't good at it, that's fine. You can learn it now. You're still a lifelong,
that's really interesting.
You're still a lifelong learner, right?
So you're kind of like bridging this whole ecosystem, parent, teacher, students, kind of bring them together into this Knowledgehook ecosystem where everyone's learning.
Yes.
From the interaction. The kids are learning the knowledge.
Exactly.
Parents are relearning. Teachers are learning how to learn better.
It's all about the growth mindset, right? It's all about that shift into like, being an expert doesn't mean you were born with this knowledge and that's it and it's fixed and it's cemented. It's that like we're all on this journey of learning. We're constantly redefining stuff. And like even if you think about all the things you thought were true 10 years ago and how many of them have changed, like the world is evolving so fast that the ability to learn and grow is far more important than the ability to have known something, right? Like you got to constantly be challenging yourself. So we're trying to like, one of the ways that we think about it is like, I don't know, like the old adage of like the African proverb of like, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to educate a child, and there's people around that child on their journey. We're just empowering the people around the child. We're like, okay, teacher, here's some stuff that'll help you be a better teacher. Parent, here's some stuff that'll help you face off with this, child. And there's, everyone else in that journey. Like, how can we engage and empower those guys? So at the end of the day, what we care about is, empowering the, I'm probably horrible for not remembering our slogan, but like, it's like empowering the children or problem solvers of tomorrow, right? That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to like empower the people around them to empower the children. And so like the parent part that's what we're trying to do is, enable the parent to know enough, join the journey. And I think by virtue of joining the journey, you also teach your kids this value of like humility and also growth mindset, right? Like, okay, I don't know math. That's cool. Let's learn it together. Like if your child's sitting beside you and you're learning with them, you're teaching them that it's okay to not know, it's okay to learn, and that you're there to learn with them, and it's a positive experience, right? They're suddenly like, okay, cool, that's fine. My dad's struggling with this, my mom's struggling with this, but we're both learning it together. Yeah. And that experience itself cements like this cool growth mindset in the child. Yeah. And they take that going forward. They're not scared of not knowing something. That's amazing. And they're able to approach problems that they've never been able to solve before and not be afraid to look dumb. Yeah. Right?
Like if you guys are truly successful, right? Like you guys are the right framework and all this, right? You're gonna end up changing a part of society. Yes. Right? Like that's huge drop rates of people who don't get the support they need. Kids who don't learn, parents who get intimidated by being part of this process, teachers who don't feel like they're appreciated enough or kind of invisible, right? So you're kind of bridging all these gaps and bringing people up to a more equal playing field. I mean, do you guys think about it eternally, like how the culture is changing if your product is like widespread and actually being used?
I mean, it's not a conversation we have. I think it's in the back of everyone's head. I think like in the back of everyone's head, we kind of feel like we're really changing the ecosystem and we're like we're changing the system without supplanting the system, right? We're not like coming in above like a Khan Academy and be like, okay, cool, you guys aren't doing it right, we're just gonna do it better.
Yeah.
We're kind of like in the system, changing it slowly. But I don't think it's something we talk about often or at all. I think we're kind of doing it one at a time. Like I think we all have in the back of our heads that this is a change that needs to happen. How can we empower it?
Right.
But we're attacking it like one student at a time, one school at a time, one teacher at a time, one feature at a time. One product at a time. It's just kind of like taking the next steps. But in our heads, I think we have a vision of what we want education to look like and what we want everyone to feel like, right? And it goes back to your story about Travis, which is like Travis, struggled with math, and it took moments of, certain realizations for him to feel, feel empowered enough to approach math, right? And he was lucky enough to have a father who was a person who taught math, and he had that like support system, and he eventually went on to do software engineering, right? Like that's one of the toughest programs at Waterloo. And so that journey, we want to empower people around the child to provide everyone the support so that everyone who wants to become a software engineer can become a software engineer. Not that everyone should, like I don't want to propagate that, but like, everyone who wants to can go totally do it. And even people who don't want to do it, like I want them to feel comfortable with numbers and
yeah. No, I mean, that's a great thought pattern to have, right? And one of the things that really interests me is like, when I went on YouTube once and saw like a 2-year-old, I think, who is playing, looked up and it's like, hey Alexa, and asked some question. I think it's like, why is the sky blue?
Yeah.
And got the answer, correct answer.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, oh, like the actual science behind it. And the kid probably didn't understand most of it.
Yeah.
But she's like, they like thought about it and then shrugged and went to playing.
Yeah.
And you think about how many times throughout history, probably, like how many billion times the kid is asked a question and it's like, shut up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The answer is go away, you're annoying. But now they can interface and get the knowledge they need and kind of pursue their own thought patterns and things, right? Like that's the great equalizer that technology is.
Yeah.
And part of what I love you guys, the fact that you're doing is like, I think about that a lot, like using voice and how that's going to change the next generation. Like I do some work with some high school students where I can pull in high schools to do talks or seminars and stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the things I tell them is like, listen, you guys are you're the weird lost generation, because you guys are growing up with like these devices, and you think you're plugged in, but the generation that's falling under you are native. Like by the time they're getting used to voice, by the time they're your age, they can tell like, hey Alexa, hey Google, program me this, make me this side app, and the voice will abstractly construct something that'll do something for them. They can play a game with or do something with, right? Yeah. Like we're already automating away technology, like actual software development into these kind of products. Yeah. So it's like, how is society evolving? I actually like thinking about this a lot.
For sure. Right? Did you see that new Google acquisition? They like acquired this codeless app development framework.
Yes.
I forget the name of it, but that like that blows my mind. Like that technology like that exists, and then to your point, like all the automation, the NLP, all the stuff that's coming into play. Like the world in 5 years is going to look so different than it does today.
Like one of the coolest things, Webflow. Came out. Like you talking about web development, right? Me too. When I first got into code, like this was only a few years ago. But like the first thing you learn is like how to code a website, HTML, CSS, and like how to all interface together. But now there's this thing, just like Wix or these website builders, you can plug and play. Like you can just literally draw things in and tell it what to do. It doesn't just do that. In the backend, it natively codes that interaction, that drag and drop into actual HTML, CSS, and builds an actual code base, which you can flip to and hard code changes to if you want to. And this thing is coding for you through a drag and drop like UI. Right? Through like
it's like the new. I've heard about Webflow quite a bit lately. Like they've I think they're throwing Wix and Square out of it.
Hard.
They're pushing it out of the market. That's pretty cool.
But like again, this is like the movement towards that, right? The next level of SaaS is things that can automate away. That's automated away in web development.
For sure. All the stuff that can be automated is going to get automated, right? That's just like the natural progression. And like, I mean, that's been happening throughout history. Like we've been automating whatever we can. And now we're just at a scale where we're automating we automated like physical tasks. And then we automated, now we're automating like knowledge workers, right? And like that used to be the thing that couldn't be automated. Now like, this is why we're working on, training up students to be able to think abstractly, because the thing you can't automate now is like that abstract thinking. And even with like ML and stuff, there's like, to a degree, you can abstract some level of abstract thinking, right? Absolutely. Have you seen like, there's the Google, the thing that like paints, I forget what it's called.
Oh, the AI painter, right? Yeah. It just paints by itself, like through an abstract concept. Yeah. Like
that blows my mind, right? That these things that we think are like human and not automatable are becoming that way.
Yeah, which is constructing art.
Yeah.
Like it's taking something and it's turning it into something else. It's through a creative process that is not predictable, but is not actually pre-predicted.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the interest of it, right? So part of my journey into this thought process, right, was this talk I listened to. I think it was on the Joe Rogan podcast, might have been different, but the idea that, you know, we change as humans. Like we think of technology as something that's like changing us now, but we've always been changing. Technology is always like, technology is what makes us human.
Yeah.
Right? So we think about like, oh, nowadays they're so antisocial because we have the devices. You know that meme from the 1950s, people sitting on the subway or the bus with a bunch of newspapers in front of them, ignoring each other. Yeah. So the idea is that technology has always been there, just showcasing what we are.
Yeah. I don't think we've been hypersocial animals ever in history. Like, I don't think cavemen used to like walk over to the next caveman like, yo, what's going on, buddy?
Yeah, exactly.
I think we're pretty antisocial. We care about our clique and that's it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
we just found these ways of working together in a bigger group. Yeah. But
you walk onto a bus and take away everyone's phone, they're not going to start talking to each other. They're going to look off at whatever ad they can look at or like look out the window, right? No one's going to be like, oh, how's it going? How's the weather? I don't care. Like everyone's focused on their own thing. So I don't think and you're right. Like, and the definition of technology is so like wide, right? I think nowadays we think technology is like an app and software, but technology is, you know, the robots that were building cars, it's the assembly line, it's the wheel, fire, the stone tools, like those are all technologies, right? The thing you use to crack open a nut, like that was a technology, right? So,
yeah. So going back to what technology makes us, right? One of the example you used was fire, right? Like when fire became a technology for us to use, it changed us physically. It killed away the gut bacteria that we had that could consumed uncooked meat. Yeah. It got us the ability to consume more calories per kilogram of like meat and things consumed, right? It made us more functional as beings, right? And like maximize our potential. It changed us physically, changed us socially, it changed us all the time. So when we look at how technology and our interaction with it is, it shouldn't be something afraid or we should be thinking about as like an external entity being created, but it's actually making us, right? And I think that's a framework that I like when like people, especially people working on projects like yours, we're using technology to empower people, rather than take away. And I mean, part of this podcast, part of the reason why we're doing like the future of work, like we talk a lot about it, is I was actually doing sales for a lot of automation companies, right? So I was doing freelance sales for automation companies, and I get to a point where I realized if I were successfully made a sale, somebody lost their job. Yeah. There was a point where I was doing sales for this automation company, as process automation for like fulfillment centers, and every time I made a sale, like a team of 3 to 4 people, their job is basically obsolete. You're either going to downsize to one person just to have like a human person overseeing the process, or those 4 people are going to be gone. And you know, I always framed it as like, oh, you know, you're taking away this X amount of work. You know, the company will utilize people separately in other ways. But not really. Right? That can kind of happen in a smaller firm, but bigger companies, oh, your specialized job is gone. We don't need you anymore. So it comes back to the way of like skills training and retraining. And I mean, have you guys thought about applying this platform for like retraining other people later on in stage for a different age group, for different
That's an interesting application. It's not something that we thought of as a core offering for us. And it's mainly because the way we format a lot of our content is like the stuff that we put to teachers speaks a very specific language that like no one else other than teachers would understand. Of course. And the stuff we create for kids is very specific to like, we tailor it so it's a voice that's comfortable. We do this video series called like Math Huddles. And it's like a small 3-4 minute video where you come in and it's a hyper-focused video on like a specific topic. So, like adding or comparing integers with a tile model, right? Which is like a model that kids learn. So like it's a very hyper-focused thing, but the way we do it is we speak it, we use a voice and language that's approachable for like the grade 4 student who's learning that. So it's not as easily redeployed, but I don't think it's too far of a stretch to be able to say that you can take this, these video series and have an adult who, historically didn't really know too much about math and is struggling with certain concepts and being able to redeploy it for sure. Yeah.
No, definitely. I just threw it out there because I feel like there's a big need coming up for like the retraining of like the expired workforce. Right. But it's cool that you guys are focusing on the next generation, of course, right? Retraining them and retooling them within the infrastructure that we already have. But I mean, before our time is up, I really want to revert back to what we originally
connected.
It's almost been an hour.
Wow,
right?
that's crazy.
It flows, man. But yeah, your work back home.
Yeah.
Right. I really want to touch base on that. We talked a little bit briefly about it, but I want to take the time to like really spotlight that because I thought it was really important.
For sure. It's something that I'm really passionate about. It's like, one of the things I've tried to do is like whittle my life down to a few passions, and Aravanai is one of the things that I'm super passionate about, which is the ability to add value back home. And I've like historically not been able to get my mind to a space where I thought I could add value until I connected with these guys. So there's Sen, Rajan, Amalin, and a guy named Bhaskar who kind of formed the board members of Aravanai. And what we've decided to do is partner, or we're the Canadian arm of an organization that operates out of the Silicon Valley called ITEEF. Okay. I'm sure you've heard of them.
Yeah.
They're some successful Tamil entrepreneurs who work to basically empower technologists back home. And so what we've started doing over the last 2 years is really partnering with, there's a group called the RLIT Hub. It's about like 10 years old now, run by a guy named Sayandan. Very, very passionate guy. They've scaled up to this massive organization. They run annual startup hackathons where kids come in and, have a pitch competition. And the way we got involved was Sen had partnered or worked with Sayandan before and said, there might be an opportunity for us to level these kids up before they actually go into their pitch competitions by putting them in front of entrepreneurs who have, done pitches and can help them curate it. So that was the event I told you about where I met Travis, where we all hopped on these Skype calls, had these kids pitch to us. We give them a bunch of feedback and told them this is how you can reposition your pitch. We worked through the business planning with them. We'd challenge their financial models or teach them how to develop a financial model, challenge their product roadmap, et cetera. And what we saw were that the judges that we brought in, who were, again, like high power executives from around the world who came in to view these competitions, gave strong feedback saying that the children who are pitching now, or the students who are pitching now, were far more capable and far more prepared.
Amazing.
And so we did that. And then that evolved into us wanting to work with actual startups, like post pitch, work with those startups to help guide them. So we've got Cuckoo Eats is a food delivery company in the north in Jaffna. There's another couple of guys who I'm working with who are developing a site called Ulaipali, which is like an Upwork for Sri Lanka.
Nice.
It's really cool, right? So working with these guys to like try to mentor them, push them, guide them towards building a product that we think will be competitive. And then now we're also working to find angel investors who can provide the funding required or the connections required. Sometimes it's as simple as getting them like AWS credit so they can have free web service for a little bit, right, as a startup. And there's no accelerator space in Jaffna right now, so we're trying to create that as well, right? So really just helping empower the ecosystem in the north and east by educating and creating entrepreneurs, inspiring them and empowering them to actually run off. Because I think like that's the way you create true change and true economic empowerment, is by enabling that. When we make one, the Cuckoo Eats guy like Chris, when we enable him, he's hired up a team of like 10 people. When those guys scale up, they're going to hire up 10 more people, and that creates a long-lasting, widespread change. And having a success story like him will also change the mindset of people there as well. Is that you're able to look at someone who looks like you in your space, who's done well, and all of a sudden it's feasible. Do you know what I mean? Like the way I feel about my career has changed so much because I've seen successful Tamil entrepreneurs come out of, like we were talking about earlier, like the guys like Sai Navaratnam or like Bai Kandabe, like the guys who grew up in Markham and Ellesmere, went to school with my brothers, who are successful guys now. I can look at it and go, okay, I can become someone like that. And so we want to create people like that in Jaffna and in the north, not just Jaffna, but like in the northeast, so that other, Tamil kids growing up can look and go, oh, there's a successful guy. That's feasible. That's reasonable. I can get there.
Yeah.
There's like a light post, right? I don't have to leave the country and go to US or, UK to become successful. There's someone in my space 2 minutes down the street who did that. I can do that too, right? That's the thing we want to create. We want to like inspire and empower people there.
Absolutely, and that's the real power of a network, right?
Yeah.
Of understanding that someone who looks like me, talks like me, who came up with the same kind of background as me, I have an understanding with, has done this, so I can use it as a framework for my own growth.
Exactly.
And that's so big.
Yeah.
I mean, you grew up in Scarborough as well. I mean, you saw such a lack of that because when our people came here to develop, everyone was developing at the same time.
Yep.
There wasn't much to draw from. As like, hey, some member of my community has done this, done that. So it's hard to get out of that mindset of like, oh, we're all trying to find a fixed path, right?
Yeah.
But now, I mean, that's a great way of kind of giving back to the back home community, is providing that. And I mean, I was so surprised I learned most of this from following you on Instagram, seeing your posts, and hearing more of your discussions.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because it was totally an experiment project for me. I didn't know what we were gonna like. I didn't know. I knew I wanted to share the story, and so I went back home and it was a last minute decision. I had just resigned from Stack, and I wanted to do something that added value back to the community. And I was really at that space in my mind where I was like, this is what I want to be doing. So I decided to it was a gunshot decision. I was like, cool, I'm booking a flight. We're going back home. We're going to do this thing. I'm going to work with these guys. I went back home. The Easter Sunday bombings kind of threw me off. I did not feel comfortable being there afterwards. In retrospect, I probably could have stayed. But as a kid who grew up in Canada, that just scared the hell out of me.
Yeah, of course.
But it gave me such a good appreciation for the way that the mindset of people who are living there. And it gave me an appreciation for why sometimes hope is such a thin resource there, because everything's so shaky and everything's so unstable, right? So we want to try to provide that stability back into the environment and provide them with the support to let them know there are people around them who want to see them succeed.
Absolutely.
And who will be there for them.
Perfect. And thank you again for coming on and sharing this journey. And I think this is a great way to wrap up, ending on that note. If there's any way that us or our community can really help with this kind of progress, process, let us know. We'd love to talk more about that.
Yeah, follow us on Instagram. It's just at Aravanai, Aravanai, like the way you'd probably spell it phonetically.
Perfect.
We haven't started posting on that channel for a bit. We're gonna start sharing a lot more. So you'll see that. This is our website. It's in development, as you can probably tell. It's a Wix site right now. We're gonna relocate the URL. So definitely a lot more stuff coming down the pipeline for us.
Awesome.
So definitely get involved.
Are you guys on LinkedIn?
It's not on LinkedIn. I don't think it's on LinkedIn. Should we be
get on LinkedIn? 100%.
Okay, I'm gonna trust you. Yeah, let's do it.
Definitely way more engagement on LinkedIn for you guys, 100%. Because I think a lot of people are gonna really drive with this, especially LinkedIn community.
Yeah.
And really help you drive in traffic.
I love that. Thank you, man. We'll do that.
Awesome.
Dude,
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Awesome.
Thank you.